Hello, citizens of Bitcoin land. My name is Graham Elwood. We are here at the Orange Pill Podcast in the beautiful Orange Pill Studios in downtown San Salvador, home of Bitcoin and pupusas and pretty sweet surfing. I like surfing. We are here with the man, the myth, the legend, Max Kaiser. How are you, Max?
I'm fine. I see Bitcoin is rallying. It's up 5%. I think the selling is done pretty much. We had some liquidation in the Grayscale ETF. They've announced they're going to cut fees finally to be competitive with the other ETFs. At some point, equilibrium will be reached and the selling will be over, and we will see the ascent back up to new all-time highs, I think, probably in the next few days for sure. And that's the way markets are sometimes. They don't go up in a straight line. But for Bitcoin, the direction has been since 2009 up.
Yeah, it's the thing we keep talking about on the show. And to anybody that's new watching or new to Bitcoin, we cannot stress this enough. Let go of the short-term price. Let that go. Over the long haul. Over the long haul.
Go ahead, continue, please.
Max is having a clamp issue. Over the long haul, it's going to do well. So this is something too to be reminded.
Don't mind me.
To be reminded.
Everything's fine here.
All right,
everything's great. No, keep going. I'm going live. Fuck it. We're going live. This is fine. Go away. You fucked up. You had a chance to fix it before. You didn't. Now I'm going to have to do it myself. Like every other fucking time, I got to do it myself. I got to do it myself, damn it. Let's do it. Go ahead. Continue.
We're going live. Max is dealing with it, and we had a mic clamp issue.
Don't worry about me.
You sure you don't want him to try to clamp that?
No, it's not going to work. I already tried it. It's junk. Okay? God darn it. What's on your mind?
So here's what I was saying.
Yeah.
This is for everybody out there to be aware of. Whenever Bitcoin hit, or anything, but whenever Bitcoin hits an all-time high, that means every single owner on the face of the earth is in a profit. So there's going to be a sell-off. There's going to be some people who are going to just go, I'm in a profit. I'm going to take some profits and sell off. That happens every time there's an all-time high. But if you hodl for the long run, it'll go up and you'll be fine. So.
Yeah, exactly. You have the sellers who put in their sell orders at those old highs, and they're just waiting for it to get to the old high. And they're like, please, I just want to get out with my money. I don't want to have any losses. When it gets to that price I paid at the 69,000, get me out. And these orders go in, and they get filled, and they made no money. Meanwhile, there's a lot of other people out there who are a little bit more savvy about markets who have buy stop orders in. The second the price hits a new high, they automatically buy, because the fact is, if it's at a new high, the amount of resistance above the new high is zero, because nobody's there to sell. Nobody bought it at that high price. So it's like there's actually nothing but air above the old high. And that's generally a time, if you're a trader, to buy on the high. Actually, look at this. I found this piece. I don't know what this is for, but whatever this is for, okay, I'm throwing it. Forget it. It's garbage. By the time this show's over, there's going to be nothing left at all of this thing. It's going to be just scrap metal for the dump. Okay, forget it. You had your chance. You blew it. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. The price is at new all-time highs. It triggers the buy orders, and, it goes higher. But to your point, the trend is up. Yeah. The trend is higher. It'll always be higher. Bitcoin is mathematically guaranteed to go to your purchasing power to increase, which means the price is going higher. Okay, fiat money, you're mathematically guaranteed to lose your purchasing power, and it'll be going down in value, mathematically guaranteed. That's not going to change. It's a law of nature. Just like the sun rises in the east, Bitcoin will continue to hit new all-time highs, always, forever.
Well, let me show you this. So I have a couple. To your point, this is a tweet that you put out to prove your point here. So, and it is you put out showing basically, you put out a home price in 2016 is $288,400. So the average home price. And you said that in 2016 would have cost you 664 Bitcoin. In 2020, the average home price was 328,900. That would have cost you 45 Bitcoin. In 2024, the average home price is $434,700. That will cost you 6 Bitcoin. Like, this is such a great illustration of the point you keep trying to make of, yes, currently we're registering this in US dollars. But if you start looking at price of how much a Bitcoin is worth, you could, even though the cost of a home, the average price in America over the last 8 years has gone up, $150,000, the number of Bitcoin you're spending has decreased by 90%.
Right. So it's outpacing inflation by an incredibly large margin. So pretty soon it'll be 1 Bitcoin to buy that same house, and then half a Bitcoin to buy that same house, because Bitcoin's going to $1 million, $5 million when priced in US dollars. Like, my life priced in Bitcoin, I bought several properties. I'm living large here in El Salvador. Based on my cost basis for Bitcoin, the entire 24 months I've been here has cost me $7.50. The $7.50 that I used to buy Bitcoin, back in 2011, now is worth, millions of dollars. So it's actually cost me nothing. I'm living for free. I can buy shit for nothing. I can buy whole buildings for practically nothing, because my Bitcoin cost basis is, under $10. So what the fuck, man? What do I care? Keep printing money. I don't give a shit, because you're just making my Bitcoin go higher. And that's going to be true for everybody. You're not too late to buy Bitcoin. You're buying it at $70,000 of Bitcoin. Well, it's going to 700,000. Meanwhile, your fiat money is going to zero. So if you own any fiat money, it's going to zero against Bitcoin. So you might as well just buy Bitcoin. Just suck it up and buy Bitcoin, because it's going higher. Now, is there volatility? Sure, there's volatility, but there's guaranteed increase in purchasing power over time. You can keep yourself in dollars and there won't be any volatility, and you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. The choice is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give my example. So 3 years ago, when it hit the last all-time high of 69,000 or whatever, I bought it all the way down.
Right.
I bought it at 50. I bought it at 40. I bought it at 30. When it got into the 20s, I jumped on it. I was happy. I mean, I'm not happy that people got screwed out of their money, but when the FTX thing happened and went below 20, I was like, amen. And, that guy's a scumbag, and I'm glad he's in prison. But in terms of just the price point, and then I've been buying it back up to this. So it's like, I got crushed when that didn't happen to me. I've just increased my amount.
Dollar cost averaging. Yes. Dollar cost averaging at swan.com. Mm-hmm. Swan, a sponsor of this show, is where you dollar cost average, and you just keep buying it. Now, there's a big difference between a Bitcoin accumulator and a trader, a stock trader. Now, if I'm a stock trader, or if I was managing a portfolio of stocks, there is a general rule to sell your losers and buy your winners, keep adding to your winners. And this is generally not practiced by most people who trade stocks. Most people trade their winners to offset the fact that they have some losers. And this results in mediocre results over years, but nobody can seem to resist the temptation to sell their winners to pay off their losers, because the psychology of losing is a lot more damaging than the psychology of winning. Most people, when they have a winning stock or a winning bet, they have a bit of an endorphin rush, versus when they have a loss. It's generally an emotional event that some people get addicted to. Well, you see it at the basis of the casino industry is people addicted to losing money. And people who sometimes, as a stockbroker on Wall Street, you would meet a lot of people like that who actually like to lose money. They feel guilty that they have money, and they come to you to seek their ability of you to take their money from them through the stock market losses that they can then justify as having had a legitimate possibility of making money, but they lost money, but they feel better because they cleansed themselves of that dirty money, right? There's a lot of psychology that goes on around money. But with Bitcoin, there is never a bad time to buy Bitcoin, and you would never sell Bitcoin because it's not a trade. You're swapping worthless fiat shit for the perfect money. And it is money. It's the money that will be the basis of the future of the entire global economy. So there is no reason to sell it ever.
And I'll give a great personal example. So when I got into the Bitcoin space 5 years ago, I made the mistake of a lot of people, and people said, oh, buy these shit coins.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So it was a little over a year ago when the Bitcoin price was like at 19,000, and I still had some of these dumb shit coins. And you know what I did? I converted a lot of them to Bitcoin.
Right.
Because I went with what you're talking about. I said, so I'm at a loss right now, but eventually when converting them to Bitcoin, I will get this money back that I wasted on these dumb shit coins.
Totally.
I will get it back.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was like, and I was trying to, and some people were like, well, I go, no.
Yeah.
Over time, I know Bitcoin's going to 100,000, 200, 500. I know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So whatever loss I had from this dumb shit coin, I will get that back and then some.
Yeah.
And I really, I mean, you and Stacy really helped me understand. And then listening to Michael Saylor, like,
of course,
just keep buying. Don't sell your Bitcoin. Obviously, if you're using Bitcoin like in a circular economy like here, that's fine to use a little bit of it, or you get paid in fiat, you convert it to Bitcoin to spend in a circular economy. But the bulk of it, stack that shit. That's what I've been doing. And now I don't feel, now that Bitcoin, of course, has made a year later, 14 months later, is hitting all-time highs.
Right.
I've got my money back from those dumb shit coins.
Right.
Because my Bitcoin has gone up.
Yeah, because your conviction goes up the more you know about it. The more you educate yourself. Michael Saylor is an excellent teacher and a guy who gives people great advice and great insight into Bitcoin. And your conviction goes up and you end up buying more. When your conviction is low and you don't really know much about it, you end up selling. These ETF buyers, for example, there's a lot of outflow from the ETFs. There were 9 ETFs that were approved. They attracted billions of dollars. And at the time I said, well, these are not Bitcoiners. These are people who got a call from their broker who said that, oh, by the way, there's something called Bitcoin. It's in an ETF now. Why don't you put $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 into it? And so they put a few dollars into it without thinking about it. They know nothing about Bitcoin, and they don't know much about ETFs either. But it's on the desk and on the to-do list of 100,000 brokers and who are looking at their list of calls to make, and they simply slip it into people's accounts and they get a commission and they don't think much about it. But then the second that's down 5%, we had a 10 or 15% drawdown in Bitcoin.
Right.
So that triggered a lot of automatic sales. A lot of people would just have sell orders put underneath the price that they paid to get out 10% below. That's something traders do. That's something that stock investors would do. So they got stopped out, they got traded out, they got sold out. And then that creates more sell orders. And then you get a 15% down suddenly. And they're not in it because they understand it. They're just in it because it's the stock du jour. That's NVIDIA of its day. NVIDIA is the bubble of today. And so people buy it, and they're momentum traders, as they're called. And but they just dump it. So ETF buyers are going to be jerking themselves off with ETFs for 10, 20 years, and they'll probably never make any money on Bitcoin because they have no understanding of Bitcoin. They don't know why they own Bitcoin. They're just going to be momentum traders, up and down, sideways, doing commissions, being a jerk, and they don't know anything about it. So that's the situation with this ETF market. However, it is a large pool of money, so it does benefit Bitcoin in that they are bringing in a big pool of capital, but it's not going to mean the volatility is going to go away. There's still going to be a volatile asset. Yeah. And now that you have these stupid, dumb money retail investors in ETFs, that's is going to not make the volatility go away. It's going to, the volatility is going to continue to be volatile. Why am I, is there somebody going to come over here?
He's going to put a new mic in.
I feel like, having my guitar string hot swapped in the middle of the set.
That's what's going to happen. We're going to swap it out. So
a couple of famous videos like BB King or something. It's like, you can still play. Go ahead, come on in here, man.
Yeah, I'll talk, and so the camera will be on me.
No, go ahead, talk, man.
All right. So,
hot swap.
Well, Max is doing a hot swap. I'm going to bring up this to Max's point. Another tweet that Max put out. Saying Wolf Richter put out Intel to get $23 billion in government grants and loans, plus $25 billion investment in tax credits to invest $100 billion in the U.S. after washing $94 billion on share buybacks. Massive handouts to the richest companies to put semiconductor production on U.S. soil. So this was in wolfstreet.com. and it shows the share buybacks. And then what Max posted was 2 words: absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
Which I got to tell you, this is why I love doing the show. This is why I love talking to you, is you break down. So if I'm just some guy, and I'm more knowledgeable than amigo.
Shut the fuck up. Shut up. So I got the kitty mic now. It's like I got the kitty mic. I'm at the kitty table. Hello, I thought I got just baby mommy. I like this podcast. This is the show with my mama. Okay, well, hopefully this is working. But nevertheless, I mean, if it's down here, I know it's not good, is it? I mean, is it sound? Do you think people can hear me down here?
I think they can.
Hello?
You know how to project.
Absolutely criminal, so what company is it again? I'll tell you what's going on.
This was Intel was getting $23 billion in grants and loans.
All right, Intel. Okay, yes. Intel, they make chips, right? And of course, it's a very, very big name, very famous company. The former CEO, I believe he's invented, he's a huge technology titan in Silicon Valley. And they famously said, that he's talking about paranoia. You have to be paranoid. I forget his exact quote, but it's like, if you're not paranoid, you're going to get crushed by the competition. And anyway, so Intel, they make chips. And the thing about it is this. Corporate America, over the past 20, 25 years, has been losing money, hand over fist. But you would never know it because the earnings that they report are denominated in the number of shares outstanding that are constantly shrinking because they buy back their own stock. Okay. Right? So a company buys back their own stock to goose the share price. And even though the earnings could be less than they were the year before, share price goes up because the earnings that they are reporting are over a smaller number of shares. So you suddenly went from $1.50 in earnings to $2 in earnings. Were reduced, the number of shares. And of course, the problem with this is that the company is not spending any capital on R&D. But Intel is a chip manufacturing company. Are they spending money on developing new chips? I mean, why did NVIDIA, this new company, this upstart that came out of nowhere, suddenly it's worth trillions of dollars, and they just introduced this new $30,000 GPU chip that's beating all the competition? Where was Intel during all this? Well, they're nowhere to be seen because they spent all their money buying back their own stock, right? Why do they buy back their own stock? Because the executives have stock options that are tied to the price of the stock. If you're an executive at Intel, you just got hired and they said, well, here's your salary. You're going to make $5 million, $10 million a year. And here's 2 million stock options. And the price is tied to the last current price of the stock. Well, guess what? If you can make the stock price go up by reducing the number of shares and making the earnings look a lot better, your options go from 50 cents to $20. Now you're going to cash out your $20 options. Now you got 2 million of them times $20. That's a lot of money, right? So it's stock options being gamed by stock purchases of the company, of their own stock, which, by the way, was totally illegal up until Reagan's time for obvious reasons. You're disincentivizing the company from making profits that come from the organic business operations of what that company is supposed to be doing. The company should be manufacturing chips, not gaming their accounting by buying back their own stock to make the executives rich. Okay, that's obviously, for good reasons, had been illegal up until Reagan deregulated it and brought it back after it was in, on the illegal side of things. And so here, the company, therefore, does not have, they're eating their own seed stock, right? They have no new products. They have no new initiatives because all that money went into buying back their own stock. And so now, because they also use their money to buy influence in Washington, they'll get their Washington puppets to pass laws to claim that, well, the chip business is a strategically important industry in America. China's our threat. China's our existential threat. China could be making a chip. China stole our chip companies. They stole all our chip technology. We got to get chips. We got to get our own chips. We need China chip, China. So they'll say, the federal government will say, well, you are bankrupted yourself by stealing all the money through stock options and stock buybacks. So we're going to take all that money, that 50, 60, 70, $800 billion you stole, and we're going to just print that up over the Treasury and give you $800 billion as an incentive to go make new chips, to do the business that you should have been doing all along. Right. And they're like, OK, we'll take your free money and we'll go make these chips. And by the way, we're going to start buying back more of our own stock with the money you just gave us anyway. Like, we're not going to make the chips. We're not going to do anything we're going to do. We're just going to use it to buy back our own stock anyway. So the criminal activity will continue without any interruption anyway. But we'll make it sound like we are doing something in the best interest of shareholders or best interest of the company, the country in which we operate, that we're supposed to be engaged in economic boosting activities as part of the social contract that exists between the governing bodies and the people being governed. But we don't care about that. We just want to treat ourselves like lords who deserve everything, and everybody else is a serf, and they can just try to pick peanuts out of squirrel shit to survive because we don't care. And so that's what that story is all about. So, stock buybacks are a completely counterproductive plague in corporate America that should be outlawed, where it had been outlawed. But, this is what the problem in America is. This is why the middle class is being wiped out. This is why cities are decaying and falling apart. This is why there's no infrastructure build out. This is why roads are collapsing, tunnels are collapsing, because all the money's being looted, all the money's being stolen, right? My theory is that after 9/11, the rich in America decided to essentially grab what they could and run. The looting starts at the top. When you see looting on the streets in San Francisco, it's just mirroring the looting happening in the CEO suites, of the C-suites of corporate America. They are the biggest looters of all. And they game the system with accounting fraud and money printing, and they loot. And they're just trying to loot whatever they can. And they know it's going to collapse, and they see it collapsing, but they just want to grab what they can right now, because 9/11 scared everybody, whether they want to admit it or not. 9/11 scared America shitless. We never recovered from 9/11, in my opinion. And those who were in a position to loot have been looting. In the old days, even the robber baron days, the Carnegies, the Mellons, the Rockefellers, they built libraries. They felt a public duty to.
They gave some back. They gave a little bit back.
They did. They Carnegie Hall,
scholarships, hospitals,
education, hospitals.
Yes, they made. They went, we have to give back to the infrastructure, to the city. And maybe some of it was ego. I want my name on the big building. But still, again, you go through New York City, these buildings are amazing. Right. And they serve the public in general. And now these guys now they take a nickel out of a baby's hand. They're awful.
There's no social responsibility. I mean, so that's the robber barons look good compared to these robbers. These are just like thugs. The robber barons, they had to go through, Teddy Roosevelt busted up the trusts, the trust busting that went on. And Teddy Roosevelt's an interesting character because he betrayed his class. He was born in a wealthy family, but he ended up really going to taking these guys to task and doing the trust busting. But in the case of, let's say, Standard Oil, when the Getty fortune, they broke it up into like 20 different companies, which made him fabulously more wealthy than he would have been had they not busted up. Just like the Ma Bell telephone company. When I was on Wall Street, we broke up Ma Bell. The telephone company, AT&T, had a monopoly on telephone services. And then MCI introduced long distance telephone discounting. And that was really a seismic change in the telecommunications industry in America. And MCI was a really hot stock on the NASDAQ back in 1983, when we were buying MCI. And so this forced a breakup of Ma Bell into the Baby Bells. So, but each one of those Baby Bells became bigger than the original Ma Bell. And then I think they've gone through a wave of reconsolidation. And like much of the old monopoly has been reconstructed anyway. And this is another thing. You have conglomeration and deconglomeration trends on Wall Street. So like Gulf and Western was a conglomerate, and then it got deconglomerated. And the way these waves come and go, and they used to make it's encouraged by bankers. Bankers, they do conglomerations because there's economies of scale. So you need to acquire this and this and this and become a conglomerate. And then 5 years later, they say, well, this division would be better off if it was separated and traded separately under its own stock symbol. So you're going to deconglomerate. So then they break it all up again. Then
they did the airlines. The airlines did this. They there was a same thing in the 80s. There was like 3-4 airlines. They broke it up. All these other airlines popped out.
Yeah.
Continental and America West and all this. And then as someone who's flew a lot in the last 20 years, I saw, all these airlines, all of a sudden, United is now the combination of like America West and Continental and what was that one out of Philly? Some other American.
Yeah.
Like now we're back to 3-4 airlines again.
Yeah, they've been reconglomerated, right? So I mean, there's another side of the story, of course, is that in the airline business, we brought in the discount airlines, which brought in affordability to air travel, which hadn't been because they were operating as an oligopoly. And phone services, long distance services were made cheaper. And then we went into voice over internet protocol and phone became free. Essentially, phone calls became free. And so there's that side of the equation. Yeah, and these two are in constant tension with each other. But it's obvious that in some instances, any cost benefit analysis for this type of stock repurchasing for a corporation is to be discouraged. And I give you a prime example, Boeing. So Boeing Airlines, every single day you see headlines that another Boeing plane is stuck on the tarmac, yep. It's on fire, the wing fell off, they make a crash landing. It's the Supermax 737, whatever the actual product number is, the plane. People are actually booking around and trying to avoid booking on that particular plane. And it's a dangerous situation. Should not be, the FAA should not allow these planes in the sky. They're very old and they're falling apart. They're disintegrating. Why? Because Boeing engaged in stock buybacks to boost their stock, to make their executive stock options worth more. Okay, that's where that money went. Instead of servicing and getting new planes, instead of building new planes, instead of taking care of their prime business, which is providing safe air travel, they decided to buy back their own stock and line their own pockets. And now people are definitely in their safety and security is threatened with this horrible situation where it's genuinely, you can't get on one of these Boeing jets without fearing for your life. Yeah. I've been on, if you have to take two planes, it's like go from El Salvador to New York, you have to go to Miami and to New York. There's a connecting flight. I don't think there's a direct flight. And anytime you take a connecting flight, you're doubling your chance of having the plane blow up. That's the way I look at it. You have to take 2 planes. Like, I don't want to take a connecting flight because you're just adding another risk factor to me. It's like, I got to get on 2 planes. I mean,
I'm flying back to LA in April. Don't tell me this. Now it's just like, you got a better chance of blowing up.
I mean, avoid planes. I want to reduce the risk of dying in a plane crash. I want to take less planes. Now, again, there's another side of the story. The actual numbers of deaths by air travel are small compared to automobile travel, I believe, and compared to other forms of travel. Air travel is still, on the statistical basis, it's still safe. Yeah. Okay, if you look at that, so I'll make that caveat. I try to be reasonable in my rants. I don't like to be just completely off the reservation in Nutsville, right? I mean, there's always a caveat to be made.
You got to have a caveat for Nutsville.
I make that caveat, and so, but the bottom line is the stock buybacks are a really shitty way to make money for corporate executives instead of just actually creating new products and hiring people. hiring people and giving them jobs. Like Boeing could have hired a bunch of people and built a bunch of planes.
Yeah.
And that would have given a lot of people a lot of jobs. And those jobs are well paying. And they would be in the suburbs somewhere, wherever Boeing's headquartered, like Seattle or something. And their kids would be at school and they'd be going to church on Sunday and they'd be having a nice roast, for dinner. But now mom's on OnlyFans shaking her tits. Dad's, addicted to OxyContin or fentanyl, sleeping in the alleyway with a needle in his arm. Little Jimmy's had his sex change to being a woman. And the fucking dysfunction is pinging toward extremism. It's like stock extremism is ripping of the fabric of American society.
No, it's true. You bring up a great point. That greed, that level of greed, think about that. The stock buyback, the concept of, hey, let's make a better product. And in order to do that, like to stay with your Boeing example, not only all the people they could have hired, let's get better engineers. Let's make smarter, safer, cleaner. I mean, this is good. Increase our profit margin because fuel is. Let's find clean energy. Like, can we? There's biofuels. Like, can we find jets that are cleaner and better for the environment? Because not only would that save us money, that would be an amazing marketing tool. You're the first airline to go, we've got green jets. People would. So instead of doing all that, they just do stock buybacks. And this is the thing, this level of greed is so psychotic.
Yeah.
Because you give people decent jobs and decent money and you're paid well.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done studies. So money buys happiness up to about $150,000 a year, right?
Right.
So they're just between if you make 50 grand a year and then you're getting a raise to 150 grand a year, that can actually take some stress out of your life, provided you're smart with your money. Oh, wow, now you can take your kids on a vacation. But what's the difference between making $16 million a year and $16.1 million a year? How does that affect your life at all? And that 100 grand, you could employ one person, and $100,000 a year would wow, that could really change someone's life. I've made a pact with myself. If I ever make 7-8 figure income, I'll never pay myself more than $300,000-$400,000 grand a year. I will put the rest in charity or hire more people because what do I need? What do I need? A house with rooms I don't use?
It's true that at a certain income level, happiness quotient disappears. You said 150,000. The last time I looked at those numbers, it was around 40,000. So obviously inflation has impacted the minimum happiness quotient on money. But the point is that it's the amount of money you have or the income that you have to cover basics and to do some stuff. Once you achieve that, it's difficult to get happier with more money. And having been in the money management world myself for many years, most people with a lot of money have no idea even how much money they have. So if somebody has, let's say, 30 million or 35 million or 50 million, they literally have no idea what they actually have. Or they'll find an account with $20 million in it that they didn't know. This happens all the time. People die all the time and they find accounts with millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like most people with a lot of money, really, it's just stagnant somewhere and being ignored. And it's not really recycling in the economy at all. No one's doing anything with it because, as to your point, there's nothing really you can do it. More money, more problems. Like when you start to spend money, when you start to invest money, it creates a paper trail. You need people to handle that paper trail. You need to hire accountants to handle that paper trail. And it gets more complicated. And you spend your day pushing paper. Like if you have a lot of money, you're managing your money. It's like a full-time job. And, the point of being wealthy is not to have a full-time job. But, number one. Number two is you attract a lot of attention from people who have a very strong opinion about the fact that you have a lot of money.
Right.
And so now you're kind of dealing with people in a way that's uncomfortable. You would prefer not to, you'd prefer just to be kind of anonymous, really. You don't want to be just like constantly talking to people about the fact that you've got a lot of money. And therefore, why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And these people are starving and this is happening here and this is going on. You should do stuff. I think people should have the right to to not do anything,
Sure.
like nobody should be able to have to do anything if they don't want to do anything. I mean, that's the most environmentally sound thing you possibly could do.
Mhm.
My carbon footprint could be zero if I'm just sitting on the beach doing nothing. My carbon footprint is zero. Okay, how about that? I'm going to help the ecology by doing nothing. How about that? I'm not going to get on a jet. I'm not going to take a meeting. I'm not going to fill out a form. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to do absolutely jack shit. I'm not going to do anything. My carbon footprint is zero, except for maybe, the bananas I'm eating might generate a little, excess carbon into the atmosphere.
The daiquiri carbon. The daiquiri carbon.
That's it. That's my contribution. As far
the buybacks, though, the buybacks are criminal, and that's the point. There's nothing wrong with making a bunch of money and enjoying your life, but when you're making money and people are getting screwed as a result, that's like awful. You make a great product and people buy it and you make good money, right on, go for it. But if you're just like, oh, I could help, but I'm going to screw people over in this corrupt thing that was legal,
well, this is where the left-right divide becomes interesting. We touched on it before.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of bad stuff you could say negatively about the right and about capitalism as such. Just like there's equally bad things to say about the left and socialism. And so, as somebody who's right of center, myself, I would say that capitalism is about competition, and you want competition because it develops into having better goods and services for society as a whole, right?
Yeah, look at all the amazing stuff that has been invented in specifically America, the apex of capitalism.
Okay, so if it's subsidized by the government's making choices, picking winners, as we hear, right? The results are historically been proven to be bad because they're not incentivized in the same way. But what happens is that in this capitalist society in America, the capitalists use their money to influence Washington, the people's representatives, to make it easier for them to game the system, to avoid taxes, to increase, like Nancy Pelosi is a good example. She's a public servant. And
worth $150 million.
Right, $150 million by trading on inside information in the stock market. So that's a failure of capitalism to a degree. And it's a failure also of government to a large degree. So all of these institutions are failing. So it's not capitalism when you would say that stock buybacks are a bad idea. Well, anybody who's a serious capitalist would agree with you that it is a bad idea. And so we get, maligned on the right equally, just like the left gets maligned. You said, if an airline came out with green energy, that would be a great marketing thing. And it could be, but, what happened is the green movement got hijacked by the woke people. So the woke people kind of glommed on to the green people, like Greenpeace became woke.
Yeah.
And wokeism is to socialism, or no, I say wokeism is to green initiatives what stock buybacks are to capitalism.
Great point.
Right? It's like they morph. Now in the U.S., we had a tradition of debate,
healthy debate
around the center.
Yeah.
Right. So we could say that here's the center is here, like these two tables coming together. So where are we differing here? And how the goal being we should be as close to the center as possible. You don't have to come over to the right. I don't have to come over to the left. But we should have a goal of being as closely aligned as possible because that would be ultimately beneficial.
And I think, too, to add to that point, this is the thing, we've talked a lot about this off and on camera, is the other thing, a part of that equation that's completely missing in today's just arguing, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up, insult, whatever, block, that where we got to come to the center. But also, the debate has to start from a we both want to find a good solution for this problem. Like, not if we're getting into competition, like I'm going to beat you, then we're already starting at a wrong place. Then I'm not going to listen to what you're saying. You're not going to listen to me. But if we come from let's find a good solution. And again, this is bringing it back to Bitcoin. This is why I love Bitcoiners. We all know it's broken. We all can see it's broken. We know the central banks are a big part of the brokenness. And we know Bitcoin is a great solution. We can debate how it's broke, who broke it, what solutions, whatever. The libertarians, I like listening to libertarians. I don't agree with them on certain things because it's like, I'll give you a great example. So we're talking about the environment. California has some of the strictest automobile emissions regulations in the country, if not the world. And people are like, oh, it's too much government interference. Well, I drive around El Salvador and there's these trucks emitting these diesel fumes. And I'm like, we could use a little regulation here. A little regulation is not a bad thing. So like, if we can agree diesel fumes are bad, right? So let's find a solution. And the problem arises when I'm coming in or anyone's coming in with some sort of agenda.
Yeah.
And anything can get hijacked. Again, like I'm an environmentalist, but when I hear like these kids throwing mustard on paintings in the Louvre, I'm like, that's the dumbest thing.
Right.
It's like 20 years ago, these idiots, this environmental terrorist, they would set SUVs on fire. That's the worst thing for you guys. Are idiots. You're psychos. Right. And anyone can become a fanatic, whatever it is.
It's fanaticism.
Yes.
And so you have a basic idea. You're frustrated because it's not getting any traction. So you become more fanatical. And then pretty soon you're doing the opposite of what you think you're doing, blowing up SUVs or this type of thing, which is incredibly destructive to the environment. And I believe, as you're saying, that Bitcoin, as far as a green solution, is actually the greenest industry in the world, because the cheapest energy would be stranded energy and green energy, renewable energy, and that's what Bitcoin mining is doing. More than 50% of the Bitcoin mining is from renewable resources. Again, it's the most environmentally sound industry in the world. And a year ago, people were saying that it wasn't, that they're burning up they're boiling the oceans and things. And then when the facts came out, you don't hear much about that. Liz Warren doesn't talk about the environmental thing about Bitcoin much anymore because it's been refuted. That's been debunked. Her theory that it's environmentally unsound has been debunked. Her theory that it finances illicit activity is in the process of being debunked, because it actually does not finance illicit activity. People engaged in illicit activities avoid Bitcoin because it's an open ledger that can be traced and tracked very easily. They got caught.
Those guys that hijacked that pipeline 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They used Bitcoin. They stole money. They hacked something and stole it. And then they got Bitcoin. And that's how they got caught. Was because they found them on the blockchain. We're like, oh, these guys are guilty.
Yeah, exactly. So they don't use it. The percentage use in illicit activity. Speaking of the environment, to change gears here for a second, I saw something interesting that people in Europe, there's a huge movement now. They want to repair the pipeline that they blew up.
The one that Biden blew up?
Yeah, because of inflation, because of energy costs. So, economics is real. Like, it's not like something that is a theory. It's real. If you cut off the supply of your gas and you have to bring it from the United States and send it over water and not just turn on the tap in Poland to get it, you're going to pay more for it. And then if your purchasing power of your fiat money is going down, and then it's going to be even more for it. Mm-hmm. So that was known before we blew this up. Before we blew up the pipeline, we knew that if you blow it up, you're going to be paying a lot more for your energy. And of course, people are saying, I don't care. I don't care if I pay more for energy. I'm on principle, I'm going to be blowing up this pipeline. Okay, so you blew up the pipeline. Now, 2 years later, energy is doubled and you can't afford food. You have to pick, do I heat my house or do I buy pizza, right? Those are the choices people are making. You're saying, you know what, maybe we should repair that pipeline. And this is where we're at in this economy in the world today, is that it's been allowed to disintegrate to a point where the cost of putting it back together now is beyond the reach of any practical solutions, financial solutions. There is no practical solutions to repair the damage to the global economy at this point.
How? So let's unpack that. Let's walk through. So we've talked a little bit about this before in the show, but it's important for people to understand. So like you say, it's unrepairable.
Mm-hmm.
How is this going to then play out? Like,
right.
It's pretty scary to think about.
Well, there's two paths. One is hyperinflationary collapse, or one is a deflationary collapse, which would mean that if the hyperinflationary collapse, I think, is easier to understand. So the government simply keep printing more money to throw at the problem, but not in a managed way. I remember they tried to stop the Gulf oil spill with golf balls. Remember that whole episode? Like that was just spewing for how many weeks did that go on? And they're like down there with golf balls or like Band-Aids. Like eventually they figured something out.
It's bubble gum.
But the environmental damage was fucking nuts, right? And again, that's BP. I'm sure that somebody decided to cut some corners somewhere.
No. An oil company
with like a $40 nut or bolt, they could have not.
Yeah, of course.
It's like 9/11, of course. They could have put $50 locks on the cabins of the pilot's cabin.
Oh man, I mean,
every jet should have had a lock to the cabin. I mean, just because some lunatic might hijack the plane, but of course that would have cost $50 per plane. That could add up. Graham, you might be spending like $1 million on locks.
No.
Right.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was an oversight, obvious oversight, cost cutting there that led to that freaking tragedy that could have been avoided with some common sense. Like, we want to help our customers, not put them in grave risk. Now, did they learn anything? No, they decided at Boeing to cut back.
They keep cutting.
So now the planes are falling out of the sky like there's a 9/11 every day. Because the lesson they learned from 9/11 was spend less, cut back more. Right?
That's what we did.
That's what we did wrong.
More cutback.
We should have been less responsible. Okay, good guys. So the source of the river of that thread was what? Now I've lost. I went down a dark alley. And I'm lost.
I love it when we get lost.
Can you help me?
Ranting.
What was the?
Here we're talking about the two possible scenarios.
Oh yeah, okay. There's two possible scenarios. So the world economy is irreparable. Okay, there's no fix, right? Because the structure has collapsed. It's like 9/11. Okay, you're not going to pick up the pieces and rebuild the Twin Towers from the shit that just fell down. That's dust.
Right.
Just dust. It's dust. It's in a cloud of dust. There's not coming back. So the global economy is becoming vaporized, essentially. So they'll continue to print money and throw it at the problem and hope it works.
It just kind of kicks the can down the road.
Right. But we know that the reason that it got to be a problem to begin with is by printing too much money. And it didn't go into the places where it should have gone. It went into the pockets of the people printing the money through the Cantillon effect. So that's what. But at the prices, that's probably what will happen, and it means that you go into a much more aggressive inflationary environment, and there'll be a lot more people going broke and homeless because the cost of food will be beyond the reach of just about anybody. Okay, so the second scenario would be a deflationary collapse. So this would be that they're going to cut the money printing.
I should say this real quick. The first scenario, probably then, if everyone's losing jobs, then what's also on top of that is social unrest, rioting, food, riots in the streets, all that stuff that Ray Dalio talks about.
Yes.
So that's to add to that potential scenario.
Right. Second scenario, and this is the more responsible scenario, would be to default.
So it's the one we're not going to do.
Right. So the one we're not going to do. We've done it once before, and I'll mention why and how in a second. But it would be to default on our debt, on the U.S. debt. We would default. We would tell China that we're not paying the debt, and all of our creditors would get nothing. Say we're defaulting. So the economy would immediately crash 98%. You would have an immediate fucking disaster. But you could build out of that. You could recover within, like Iceland, when they got hit with the 2008 financial crisis, they actually went after the banks and they
arrested the bankers.
They arrested the bankers and they defaulted essentially on all their debts. They defaulted. They went the default route, and the economy went to zero effectively. And they rebuilt it from scratch, and now they're doing fine. Okay, this is a much smaller economy, and it's in Iceland. It's not the United States of America. It's not a $334 trillion economy, but nevertheless, the responsible thing to do at this point would be to cop to the fact that this debt that we sell is not worth what we say it's worth, and we need to default on it. And we would start from scratch. So everybody would have to pull together. There would have to be social cohesion. You know, your neighbor would be broke. You'd have to go and give him a ham sandwich, you know, to keep him alive for another 6 months or whatever.
You'd have to work together. Like, hey, I'm growing carrots in my backyard. You're growing apples. I'll trade.
Yep.
So we both can eat.
That's the only actual way to survive as intact as a country, is to do that. But, you know, that's not going to happen. So, you know, we know that the wild card would be that the BRICS. You see, when Russia invaded Ukraine, it changed that, you know, I've talked about this before. So the 40-year bull market and the bond market ended, and inflation genie was out of the bottle. I mean, the reason we have inflation right now, in large part because of Russia invading Ukraine. Russia is the biggest commodity producer in the world, and their pricing discovery for commodities, for oil, gas, the world reserve currency is the dollar, and the dollar is really controlled on Wall Street. And also Wall Street gets a commission on all those dollars that circulate in the global economy, and it's a huge money spinner for the United States. But once Russia invaded Ukraine, they said, you know what, we're going to price the commodities ourselves. We don't need you anymore. We're going to get out of the dollar, which everyone is getting out of the dollar. The BRICS are getting out of the dollar. So that means that there's no buffer for the United States. They're going to be paying the full price for oil, gas, food, commodities. You see it in cocoa already. I think cocoa is a canary in the coal mine. It's a harbinger of a much bigger move in commodities. Cocoa price is up like 400%. It's absolutely screaming to the upside. And I think this is a harbinger of greater price appreciation in the whole commodity market. So I think commodity markets in the beginning of an extended multi-year bull market, and commodity prices are going to be going up dramatically,
which will drive inflation.
Which is, of course, it's a bedrock driver of inflation. So steel, iron, gold, silver, cocoa, wheat, right? Pork bellies, right? Food, agriculture, the soft, the hard, all commodities, cotton, right? It just all is going to go double or triple. And because the dream world that America has been living in since the end of World War II, where we get other countries to buy our debt so that we can buy their goods cheaper, it collapses. They won't be buying our debt anymore. So we have to go to the open market and buy the stuff on the open market. And the open market price for gas could be $20 a gallon. The open market price for wheat could be triple what the current price is. So the countries with the commodities, like Russia, they're insulated because they're swapping commodities for that shit. Their global trading currencies are commodities, not dollars. So they are buffered. They're not going to be hurt the way the U.S. would be hurt, because the U.S. has no manufacturing. And, you know, we have corn. We have a lot of corn, you know, but we'd have no steel or anything like that. No industrial capacity, nothing to export. We import stuff. The biggest export in America for a long time was garbage. Like, we would send our garbage to China in container ships full of cardboard garbage. And there's a billionaire woman in China who was buying all of America's garbage. All of the cardboard boxes that we sent to China as garbage, she recycled and sold them back to America. She's a billionaire, right? So, like, this is like just another story. of how some of these trends and
So the existential threat is we're just so stupid. China keeps beating us. That's how we're the existential threat. When we say there's an existential threat, it's like, no, they're just smarter than us.
They're competitively beating us. So like the TikTok ban is stupid because it's actually owned by a lot of Americans own TikTok stock. It's a publicly traded stock. I mean, Rand Paul did a very nice little video on this, like who actually owns TikTok. It's not Chinese. It's not a Chinese company. You cannot, by definition, call it a Chinese company based on who actually owns that company. And the problem is that they're out competing American social media companies like Facebook and others. So again, capitalism gone amok. Mm-hmm. These guys like Mark Zuckerberg and others with hundreds of billions of dollars can go to Washington and get laws passed by buying the lawmakers to pass laws as a protection racket to go after TikTok and to dissolve TikTok.
Yeah, it's also too like 60% of Gen Z is on TikTok.
Yeah,
and there's all this like calling out Israel and America's supporting of Israel, and so there's like some messaging that America does not want to get out from TikTok because they can't control TikTok the way they can the American.
They cannot.
Yeah,
it's so. I mean, we saw during COVID that they had a complete lock on all media, pretty much. TikTok has emerged as a breakaway social media platform that they don't control the narrative. And so they are going after it for those reasons. But they put it under the rubric of China threat, which is, stupid because they could be stumbling into a world war, right? I mean, Russia is basically saying that, look, I mean, if France sends troops to NATO, to Ukraine, to NATO members, I mean, NATO starts putting boots on the ground and starts shooting at us like this, okay, then it's called World War III. And we're ready for it. We've been planning for it. We've got lots of people ready to go. We've got a lot of weapons. We're fucking got a lot of nukes. And,
we all die. Nobody wins.
If that's what you want to do, we'll do it. I mean, we're happy to oblige you in this regard.
America's it's insane asylum.
For what reason? Yeah. What is the game there? So I mean, the short-term gain from the defense contractors is obvious, right? They get to make a big payday. And so that's capitalism run amok, right? That's capitalism brought us this mess. It's extremism, capital extremism. So I make the comparison between radical theocratic fanatics, religious fanatics, and American radical theocratic capitalist fanatics. It's like religious fanatics would pick up a book of spiritual guidance and read a paragraph, and their conclusion would be that they need to go kill some people.
Yeah.
Whereas some capitalists in America will read Adam Smith and decide, based on their interpretation, they need to do massive stock buybacks, disenfranchise people, and kill people in a different way. Right? So they're both terrorists mentality. One wears a three-piece suit and works on Wall Street, and one is wearing different attire and living in another country. Right? But they have the same, they're willing, I call them suicide bankers. They blow themselves up and they're friends for money. They'll kill themselves for money, just like a radical theocratic would kill himself for their belief. And it's basically a misreading of the basic text. The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith is one. He wrote another book called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, which explains why markets need to be governed. Right? I mean, the invisible hand, which is described in Adam Smith's book, Wealth of Nations, I believe is where he talks about the invisible hand, is what most people focus on as being like, I have license to be a capitalism or an anarcho-capital, no regulations. But they didn't read the rest of Adam Smith's work, which explains the need for regulations. Right?
It's like people, like you say, they'll just cherry pick stuff out of the Bible.
Right.
That Jesus loves everybody. They kind of gloss over that one to go right to the or kill you because you're different or whatever. You can do that with any religious text.
That's what they do. So yeah, in the U.S. there had been a great tradition of debate. And as a result, the American character, the American tradition was somewhat egalitarian, and the American dream was real. People could come here and work and get a house, get kids, and from wherever they were. But that is really, really, really out of reach now. I think it might be gone. Completely gone.
We've talked. In your tweet that I posted earlier, the average home price is $430,000. That's nationwide.
Yeah. Right.
California, it's $800,000. If you're making the average American salary is about $47,000.
Right.
So if you're making 47 grand a year, how are you supposed to save up the $86,000 to put 20% down, or even 10%?
Right.
You got to save up a year's salary.
Right. To
get 10% down on a house. $2,200 mortgage or whatever,
right.
At 7% or whatever we're paying now. How is that?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Right. So it's not coming back. You can't fix it.
No.
So therefore, it's either hyperinflation or default. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Like, once the U.S. has defaulted on its debt, do you know when? Do you know this? Do you know the circumstances?
Is it before the stock market crash of 29?
By the way, that Jeopardy theme music, written by Merv Griffin, was a huge money spinner for Merv, who owned all the rights to that.
Merv Griffin made so much money. He owned almost every TV show that came out in the 70s. And I know somebody who knows one of Merv Griffin's kids. Their kids are getting, I don't know what.
Merv Griffin, yeah. I have a Merv Griffin story. So when I was in Los Angeles doing Hollywood Stock Exchange, we're trying to raise money. So we went to meet Merv Griffin. And, we're driving to the airport. I'm like, where's Merv's office? It's at the airport. Like, okay. So we pull in, park the car, and we go to Merv's office. And it's like a very nondescript box, middle of the airport. There's Merv, wow, Merv Griffin. And I'm like, I say, I'm not, something's missing here, Mr. Griffin. You're a media mogul, and this doesn't seem like a very interesting office. So what's wrong? He goes, well, hold on. Opens the door, and it's adjacent to a hangar with Merv's jet, right? With this huge Griffin on the tail. Yeah,
MG1 or whatever.
Yeah. It's like, I'd like to be near, I have a meeting, I have to be in such and such in an hour, they'll be on my jet. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then. Forget I ever said anything.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Forget that. I don't know what I was thinking. So anyway, before I went on that digression,
let's wrap up here.
What was I saying?
You said, what was the last time the U.S.
So in 1971, the thing is, when Nixon closed the gold window, it's because America essentially defaulted on its debt to Great Britain, because the Great Britain was demanding their gold back, and I might be mangling this slightly, but essentially they wanted their gold back, and Nixon said no, and he paid them in dollars.
And that's why he took us off the gold standard?
Yeah, so the U.S. defaulted essentially on its debt. It was a U.S. default on its sovereign debt, and people don't terms, but that's essentially what happened. So we have defaulted on our debt in a reasonably recent past under Nixon.
What would happen if the U.S., since it's a monetary sovereign and can print money, what if it just printed out all of its debt and paid it off?
Well, you're monetizing your debt, so that it would become worthless really rapidly. It's already kind of doing that anyway.
Right.
But so the market value would immediately crash as it's happening now. People are understanding that the only buyer of the U.S. debt is the U.S. It is printing money to buy its own debt. So that's why it's becoming so precarious. Now, as the BRICS establish themselves outside of the dollar, and they don't need a dollar for global trade anymore, then money will flow into whatever currency they're trading. the Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble, or they will probably come up with a common currency like the euro, but it'll be backed by gold or something like that. So once there's a competing currency, like a gold-backed brick currency, right? The money flows around the world would flow out of the dollar and go into that currency, right? And so then that dollar has even less value. So now when you go to the supermarket, it doesn't cost you $3 for an avocado. It costs you $12 for an avocado, because it's literally going down the path of Venezuela, where the streets are littered with paper money. You need a suitcase of paper money to go to the grocery store. And that's what's coming, because the rest of the world is like, fuck you, like driven by Russia, because Russia, has been saying for 20 years, look, NATO, buzz off. Okay. Not even in World War II did we have so many tanks on our border. Yeah. Like, fuck off.
We're going against the NATO charter. The NATO charter, they came out in 1954, whatever, said we're not allowed to go east. And that's all we've done.
That's it.
Is go east. In 1998, we passed, there was a bill to move NATO east. And like 14 US senators publicly said, this is a bad idea. We're going to antagonize Russia. Is before Putin even got into office.
Yep.
And there's no way, and people always see, oh, Graham loves Putin. This is not a support of Putin.
No.
This is just saying and Putin said this in an interview, if Russia was trying to put bases in Canada, we would go bananas.
Right.
If China was putting bases in Mexico, we would go bananas.
Yep.
Look what happened to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Why did that happen? Because we had already put nukes in Turkey. We antagonized we started the Cuban Missile Crisis. America is causing problems.
Hugely. And there's no good media debate about it.
No.
Right? So there's independent media, but independent media doesn't have the reach of NBC, ABC.
And down. I mean, look at Tucker Carlson. This is a lot about Tucker Carlson I don't agree with, but he goes to Russia to interview Putin and everyone starts attacking Tucker Carlson. I'm like, well, if you're a journalist, why don't you get on a goddamn plane and interview Putin?
Right.
Plus, Putin has been interviewed by all of these Christian Lamanpour, all these CNN people, because he's a world leader.
Yeah.
Aren't you not a journalist? Should you not want to interview a world leader? This kind of stuff drives me nuts. And no matter what you say or do, and I've done a lot of indie journalism, I've been called a Kremlin puppet because I was on RT. I was on Peter Lavelle's show, Crosstalk, a bunch. I was on Lee Camp's show. I was called a Putin because I'm like, friends of mine were okay with RT getting shut down. I go, goes against freedom of the press.
Right.
Don't you want to hear dissenting views? And now it's any view, and either side gets shouted down by the other side. You can't. Now it's just anything you say is wrong, anything. And there's no reasonable debate. We don't have, like you said, we don't have real journalism.
No.
And, we've talked about this. There used to be like healthy discussions and debates. And now a debate would just be some pay-per-view event to make money to see two people fight. Now it's just be like Real Housewives of Dumbtown or whatever. Like that's what we get now. We don't even get.
No, the quality of the fake debates has gone down.
Yeah.
It's just like the quality of fake wrestling has gone down, right? The quality of fake food has gone down. It was when I was a kid, there was a few things like Crisco, it was an industrialized food product that was just a piece of garbage, but now there's almost no food in food. Right? There's almost no debate in media. There's no medicine in medicine. It's all crackpot, lunacy, nut jobs. It's like I said to earlier, like I've been doing this fasting every week for 84 hours a week, starting on Monday night through Friday morning.
Wow.
Just water. So my immune system kicks in. You go into a state of apogee. And so your body is like, we need to boost your immune system because you're like not eating anything. So I've been doing that for 84 hours a week, every week for 7 out of 8 weeks. Usually 1 out of 8 weeks, I don't do it. But 7 out of 8 weeks, I will be on this. I'm doing it right now. So on Monday after lunch, I stop eating until Friday breakfast. Just water and some a couple of supplements.
Coffee or whatever.
Coffee, I have, yeah, coffee. So, and that's brought on by the fact that I can't stand the fact that I live in the totally synthetic piece of shit world.
Yeah, with all the food.
Like my body is real, and my body tells me it's real when I don't put anything into it. It's like, hey, dude, what the fuck's up with this? But also, I tell you, when I was in my 30s, I used to it wasn't fasting, but I would cut my calorie down. And I was working out a lot. And your body is screaming for food. It's really put food in me now. Your body, when you're 30, your metabolism is racing.
Yeah.
You want food. Now I'm in my 60s. If I don't eat, my body says, great, give us a day off. We represent your body. The liver will come up and say, in behalf of your body, or my kidney, we applaud your decision not to make us work for these 3 days because we need the rest because we're old like you.
No, I've started to do intermittent fasting. I'll go 14 hours from night to morning before I eat. So my mornings and I've done a 30-some hour fast, and I've seen people sometimes do one 24-hour fast a week.
Yeah.
I see the benefits of it. I really saw my mental focus.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Anyway.
Gosh, I guess many hours have we been doing?
We've been talking for 58 hours.
This is longer than Joe Rogan's longest podcast. How long is he? I think he went 14 hours once.
Well, that's pretty much our...
Bitcoin's up, 7.1%.
Boom!
68,000.
Eat it.
But what does it mean? For me, it means nothing. Is my life changed? If I were to figure this out, since we've been talking, the zeros at the end of my thing went up again. But what the fuck? Does it change anything? No, same shit every day.
Buy Bitcoin, folks. Someone in the chat was like, why are these guys pushing Bitcoin? Look, this show is supposed to be educational and entertaining. So we want you to get out. We explain all of the corruption of the banking system because regular people have and are getting screwed over, and Bitcoin is a way out. So, but if none of you buy it, you'll be fine. I'll be fine. So when people people argue, I always go, then don't buy it.
A Ponzi scheme is you need a constant flow of people on the bottom of the Ponzi scheme or the pyramid scheme to make it work. But Bitcoiners are we don't care if you buy it or not. And we prefer that you didn't buy it, as a matter of fact, because, we don't want your stupidity around us, fuck you. That's the opposite of a Ponzi scheme.
And once people wake up to the Bitcoin, then let's talk. Let's talk about all the ways we're fixing things and doing cool projects. But
yeah. I'm curious. I like debating people who have, to try to get them over onto the Bitcoin side, because every single argument that's ever been presented has been debunked or proven to be a fallacious non-starter of an argument. There's not a single argument against Bitcoin. And the truth of that is becoming clearer every single day, right? It used to be difficult 10 years ago.
Sure.
Bitcoin was $5. Hard to have people take it seriously.
That tweet you put out today, you can buy a house for 6 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So when Bitcoin hits 100, 200,000, means you're going to be able to buy a house for a Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes to $1 million. You can buy a $500,000 house for half a Bitcoin. Might be worth looking into, folks.
It might be something to check out.
And speaking of checking it out, go to our sponsor, swanbitcoin.com, folks. /orange pill.
This is the Swan signal.
Boom, the Swan. It's Corey Klepson. It's Bitcoin
Corey.
Only.
The whole thing, Swan, is just a front so that Corey can show off his basketball skills.
That's all he wants to do.
That's all he wants to do. He wants to take his shirt off and do 3-pointers in LA somewhere, right? And then the only way he can do it, because obviously he sucks at basketball, but the only way anyone would pay any attention to it is if he has this huge multi-gazillion-dollar company called Swan. And then they're like, oh, let's watch this guy with his shirt off miss 3-point shots on his annual confab.
That's like, I just want to get famous so I can play in a celebrity basketball game. That's all I want to do.
That's all it is, man. It's a fucking scam.
So,
It's like, God damn it,
Go to swanbitcoin.com/orange pill, folks. Right there, this /orange pill. Get $10 of free Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin.
Oh, by the way, we're doing a Swan event in Washington, D.C.
Ooh, when?
We did one in Miami.
Yes.
I feel like Jim Jones now. Everyone has a cup with some Kool-Aid. And together, we're going to see God. So we were in Miami, and we did a Swan event, a private event for private Swan clients. And it was great. It was a great event. They signed up a new client, some huge whale.
Nice.
Max and Stacy bringing in the whales, the big whales. So now we're going to go to D.C. We're doing a big D.C. event. We're going to bring in the Salvadorans, a lot of Salvadorans who want to find out what's happening in El Salvador. We'll be in Washington, D.C. And that's coming up soon. So, more about that. More about that. Fasting doesn't impact me whatsoever. The fact that I'm almost completely unconscious right now and rambling nonsensically has nothing to do with the fact that I haven't had anything to eat for like 48 hours. Trust me, this is just my normal state, complete lifelessness, rambling on with non sequiturs in a very poetic way. Why? Because my organs have taken over. It's actually my liver and my kidney are talking to you right now. And they're sending semaphore into the camera, begging you, the listener, to send them food. But I won't let that happen, because the only way they can get it is through my mouth. And if I keep talking, I won't be eating. So they won't be getting that food. That's my strategy. So fuck you, kidney. Fuck you, liver. Fuck you, small intestine. Who's boss? The brain. It's my brain. My brain is the boss. Okay, my brain. You don't take over from my brain. Okay, colon. You got an important job. I understand that, but my brain rules the colon. Okay. Now, speaking of colons, did you know that the fetus?
This is a fasting fever dream. This has become a fasting fever dream. I do feel like I'm in Jim Jones's cult, where you're just babbling on. I'm talking to your colon. Like, this is insane.
Let me explain something about your colon. Now, the fact is, think about this for a second. This is one of life's lessons. The fetus. And I should premise this by saying I could be completely wrong. However,
please put that as a chyron on the bottom of the page.
The fact is that the fetus, when it's developing, one of the very, very, very first bits that develops is the colon, is the asshole. Right?
We all start as assholes.
Right. Because think about it. You need a place for the waste.
Yeah.
Right? So the fetus is growing, and as it grows, it's generating waste product. And that waste product needs to be expelled from the fetus. So you need a place to go, and that would be the asshole of the fetus, the colon of the fetus, right? So we all grow around our assholes, essentially. We are, in fact, all assholes surrounded by a lot of other cells that end up pretending that we're not assholes. Like the brain stem develops into this egomaniacal, monstrous organ, trying to convince ourselves that we're not assholes. And yet the fetus could tell you that that's false. And then the fetus doesn't have a brain yet, and yet it has more intelligence about self-awareness, I would say. Self-awareness.
I feel like Martin Sheen trapped in Colonel Kurtz's compound.
It could be Charlie Sheen. There was a period there where he made no sense. He went on Alex Jones. Completely it made no sense for like 3 years, Charlie Sheen. Yeah. So on that note, maybe we should wrap it up.
Folks,
should I break this microphone as well? Should I break this microphone as well?
Since we all started as assholes, buy Bitcoin. That's the point here. So go like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching. We'll be live again Friday at 3 o'clock. And thank you so much.